Truth Sports Network. I'm one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show, Sam McGinnis. I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm exhausted, but I'm ready to go for next hour, McGinnis.
Yeah, how far did you drive again to get here today?
All right, so it's a 12-hour trip down to Clemson. It's 12 hours back. So I had graduation. And, the whole graduation ceremony took about an hour and a half. And then we spent what ended up being about 25 and a half, 26 and a half hours in the car because of traffic and all that stuff. It ended up being like a 14-hour trip on the way down. And it's just the GPS in the car wasn't working because it's an older GPS and they didn't know there were new roads they didn't know existed. So it was just a lovely time.
Oh my goodness. So you drove more than 24 hours and you did this by yourself?
In 3 days.
In 3 days?
No. My parents were there because they wanted to see me graduate and all that stuff. It's a very big thing for them. If it was just me, I would have had my I would have had my diploma just mailed directly to me and not gone to the thing. I'm not very big on the ceremonial stuff, but at the same point, for them, it was obviously a very big deal because I'm the oldest son. So I figured it was important that we went and we did. So I'm grateful we did that, but at the same time, I'm not getting on the road for a long time again. I used to do another long road trip like that. It was awful.
All right. Well, we got a great show lined up for you today. A lot of news from across different sports leagues, NFL, NBA, NHL. And we do actually have some big college games coming up this weekend also.
Yeah, we do. I guess we'll start with college football news then since you segued into it. But we'll start here real quickly. Just a few snippets here. We have the conference championships are tomorrow. All the big conference championships except for the Pac-12 championship game, which is actually on right now between U.S. and Oregon. I'll check the score of that game actually in a second. That one's going on tonight at this point, at the very moment. Then we have the all-year conference championships tomorrow, including the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, all the ones that you are interested in. Well, affect the college football playoffs. You have Florida versus Alabama for the SEC, Notre Dame versus Clemson in the ACC, the Big Ten, Northwestern versus Ohio State. So you got all the big games coming up tomorrow. And it's going to be probably the highest action, the highest slate of college football games we've had in, I'll say, 3 or 4 weeks at this point.
Yeah, and to give you a little bit of an update on the game you were just talking about, it's 21-7 Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, and the Ducks are not ranked, actually. The Ducks don't even have a top 25 ranking, while they're down pretty early. I think they've thrown a pair of interceptions, so they're having a pretty slot to the game for them. But that's really all I got for college football news. Just want to mention the games are coming up. Clemson's going to beat Notre Dame tomorrow and claim a spot in the college football playoffs yet again. So that'll be very interesting.
The worst part of that is you're bragging about that so much, but the problem is you're not wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. They're going to win tomorrow and they'll get in. It's just a very good program. Even if Clemson loses tomorrow, there's still a decent chance they get in just because there's not any other teams up there that I think are good enough to challenge Clemson right now.
Yeah, I think we're pretty set on who the top 4 are at this point, I would think.
Yeah, the only thing that could really upset the apple cart is if somehow Alabama was to lose, or if any one of the favorites were to lose, that includes Clemson, so if Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama were to lose, it could really upset what we're expecting. But even then, if Alabama lost, I still think Alabama gets in. If Ohio State's lost, they're probably up. But if Clemson loses, there's still a chance Clemson gets in. So it's really going to be an interesting situation to see how it all plays out tomorrow.
Is it in the worst way to be Ohio State if they lost, though, because they played less games?
Absolutely. If Ohio State loses, they're out. I think Notre Dame can lose and still get in for sure. Alabama can lose and still get in for sure. Clemson will be 50-50 if they lose. If Ohio State loses because they played 5 games so far, if they lose, they're done. They will have no chance of getting in if they lose tomorrow's game.
So, beat Northwestern is what you just told Ohio State to do.
Pretty much, they have to. I'm hoping they don't, though. I'd much rather see Ohio State get bumped down, put someone like Cincinnati in than Ohio State.
Cincinnati got bumped back, though. They're still – yeah, I don't know if Cincinnati's really got a chance.
The college football playoff committee is so dumb. It's so weird. I don't know any of you guys, so I guess I shouldn't call them dumb, but at the same point, it's really hypocritical because Ohio State is in the top 4 despite only playing 5 games this year, not playing for a couple of weeks at this point. Right. Cincinnati got moved back because they haven't played games in 2 consecutive weeks. Ohio State hasn't games in 2 consecutive weeks either, but Ohio State didn't get moved back. It's because Cincinnati's not a conference team, and Cincinnati's not the darling of the Big Ten like Ohio State is. So, it's a little bit disappointing to see that constant hypocrisy college football playoff committee, but what else would we expect at this point?
Unfortunate news there. But let's move on to some NFL news since we're already talking football. And I was watching the game yesterday. Marcus Mariota looked good when he came in for Derek Carr.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, he had that one interception that he didn't make the tackle on. So there's a little bit of a hiccup there. But, I mean, he was electric for them. He really gave them – I mean, he's the only reason they were in the game to begin with, actually. Without him, they would have been basically up shit's creek without a paddle. Derek Carr had a little bit of a rough start to the game. He had a groin injury and is expected to be impactful for the next 2 or 3 weeks, so he could miss significant time here. And we could see Marcus Mariota potentially finish the season for Las Vegas just because of how long Derek Carr could be out. That'll be very interesting. The Chargers did not win this game 30-27 despite basically trying to lose at the end of regulation.
I cannot tell you the number of times I was sitting at the TV thinking, oh, well, this team's going to win now. And then they find a way to not win the game. That was
exactly right.
The story of the fourth quarter. It was like, oh, field goal, whatever. Oh, you're going to miss? Okay. Oh, you're going to go down the field and, have at least a chance to win the game. Oh, I think I'll throw an interception now. Like, it was everything they could possibly do not to win the game on both sides. And just unfortunately for the Raiders, and this is probably their playoff hopes gone now, is the Chargers ended up winning.
Yeah, this is probably it for Las Vegas. But a similar thing happened last year. They were in it late in the season last year, and they ended up losing to New York Jets and ended up falling. They've done the same thing this year. And you have to start wondering. So at some point, is it the coaching staff? It's not quarterback play necessarily because Derek Carr wasn't playing in the game. So is it the coaching staff? Is it the draft picks? The defense certainly needs a lot of help. The defense for Las Vegas is pretty bad. So I just have to wonder. You've got to make some snippets this year for the Raiders this offseason.
The defense was interesting. At the beginning of the game, they were getting passed on all over the place. Then near the end of the game, they were getting run on all over the place, and they just didn't seem to have any sort of a way to stop them consistently.
No, and Justin Herbert had a pretty good day too. And Mike always harps on Justin Herbert because he's a Tua guy and he's a barrel guy. He really likes those two as opposed to Justin Herbert. And I had my fair share of concerns about Herbert coming out of college too. I did not like Herbert coming out of college. Well, I'll admit, I've been wrong. He's been very good this year. And a few down weeks here, but he really rebounded well, played good against the Raiders, and they picked up their second win in a row.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for both teams, they've just eliminated the team that had a chance, and they still have none. That's just got to be a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, they did snap, 6 straight division losses?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers have not been good this year. The Chargers are a very talented team, but they're just not winning games. On the flip side, the Raiders are not an extremely talented team in my mind, at least not as talented as the Chargers, but they won more games than I expected this year. So there's a little bit of give and take in that situation. And part of it, I believe, was coaching for the Chargers. They're going to change their coaches this offseason. Move on from Anthony Lynn and hopefully get Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the NFL, back from IR. So there's a lot they can do there to change their fate. But right now, Chargers are extremely talented, and the Raiders are kind of turning into choke artists here down late in the season like this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Which of those two teams do you think has a better future in the next, let's say, 5 seasons?
Ooh, I mean, that's a really good question because I like what the Raiders have in Jacobs, and I like Derek Carr. He's underrated. I love Darren Waller too. Darren Waller is a top 3 tight end in the NFL right now. The issue is that you don't have a outstanding offensive line, and your defense. I mean, your defense has so few plus players, so few positives on your defense right now. Maybe Jonathan Abram, the safety, who's banged up kind of every other week. Trayvon Mullen, the corner from Clemson, he's pretty good. You've got Max Crosby, who's maybe a 10-sack per year kind of guy at defensive end. Otherwise, you don't have a lot of players who are making a huge impact defensively. Corey Littleton, a free agent you signed this offseason, he's missed games. He hasn't been consistent for them. So to me, I'm going to go with the Chargers here because you got Justin Herbert, you have Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler. Offensive line is still banged up, but Justin Herbert, after Thursday night's game, for the highest passer rating in the league against the pass rush. So when he's rushed, when he's forced to move around, he's tied for the best passer rating in the NFL. If you've got that guy back there, having a bad offensive line doesn't necessarily kill you. And defensively, you have Joey Bosa, Kenneth Murray, who just drafted a middle linebacker, and Derwin James. I think the Chargers have a much higher ceiling, a much brighter future than the Raiders at this point.
Well, there you go. All right, what's up next?
Yeah, we got a little more quick NFL news here. I'll just roll through this real quick. Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, and Alex Smith are all out, so those prominent names you're not going to see this coming Sunday. We have 2 Saturday games as well, surprisingly. So we got a couple of games tomorrow that maybe you can tune in to watch. Dwayne Haskins will start for Washington, of course, because Alex Smith is out. And Drew Brees is back, baby. Just time to save the New Orleans Saints from falling apart here down the stretch. So he's back. Taysom Hill is going to be their utility guy, and Jameis Winston's moving back into his usual position as the number 2 backup, which I don't understand why you didn't just play him to begin with. But they are playing the Chiefs. They're playing the Chiefs. This is a significant game here. You got Kansas City coming to town, and you never know what you're going to get here when you're battling Patrick Mahomes. You need Drew Brees for this game, and it gives them a fighting chance. It's going to be probably the game of the week. I think everyone's going to be watching this one. Outside of that, Daniel Jones and Matthew Stafford are questionable. It's really all the NFL news I got for today.
Yeah, I mean, I know we saw the Browns and Ravens game as the current game of the year, but this could potentially contend for it because both those teams are better and probably both of them top 3 teams in the NFL. Top 3, top 5.
Absolutely. I think the Saints number 1 right now. Right now, I have the Saints number 3. Bills are maybe number 2. But either you could say the Saints are number 2 either. I think it's really – I'm not sold on the Bills. I'll be honest. I'm really not. I just put them there because the Saints lost to the Eagles.
The Saints did lose to the Eagles. They were without Breeze, though. And the other thing you do have to keep in mind is every team is going to lose some game to somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
An interesting fact, Doug Peterson, I believe, is 11-3 without Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I think he's got a higher winning percentage without Carson Wentz than he has with him. Yeah. But something's going to happen here at Philadelphia.
He's good. Yeah, I don't know if that's just because he's good with making stuff up on the fly with new quarterbacks like Foles and Hurts, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's going to be the storyline of the offseason off that, especially because it's Philly sports. Philly sports tend to rule all. But really quickly here, I do want to get through some NBA news as well. This is going to be a very short segment here. The NBA, as you know, 72 regulars start up in a couple of days. Right now, we're still doing preseason. We got preseason games on night right now. Going for a little while, so we've been getting up for the regular season. Some news that came out recently. NBA is investigating the Clippers and executive Jerry West in the signing of Kawhi Leonard last offseason per TMZ Sports. So apparently, Jerry West offered Kawhi Leonard, I guess an associate of Kawhi Leonard, like $2.5 million to help get Kawhi to the Clippers. Apparently also bought Kawhi's uncle a home or something like that. So that's gonna be really interesting to see how that plays out. I don't think it really. Let me put it this way.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna
buy your.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna buy your dad a house. Come over here.
It's not even his dad, it's his uncle, but I guess his uncle is really close to him or something like that. I don't know. In the broad scheme of things, does this really matter? Probably not. I just think it's a funny storyline to follow. And the Houston Rockets are expanding their trade options for James Harden, looking beyond competitive teams in the Eastern Conference at this point. So it seems like the relationship between Houston and James Harden is going to be broken here sooner rather than later. He's going to be traded probably, but we'll see how that plays out. That will make a team somewhere else very happy and a contender probably for next.
All right, where do you think are the top 2 landing spots for him, though?
The top 2? That's rough because the team people keep linking him to is the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it really benefits Philadelphia if they did that. But the reason everyone keeps saying that is because Philadelphia has what Houston wants. Philadelphia has a ton of draft picks. They've got a young player who's between 20 to 25 years old who's a future superstar. Houston wants a player they can build around for the future, so someone like a Ben Simmons or a Joel Embiid. And they want probably 3 first-round picks with Harden, maybe 4, depending on what they're getting back in return. There are very few teams that can actually meet that. The Toronto Raptors have that in Pascal Siakam in the draft picks. Philadelphia already has that. But very few other rosters. I mean, the Miami Heat, Tyler Hero is not going to be that kind of player right now, at least. So you can't say Miami would do it. And just looking down the league, I mean, maybe if Chicago sent Zach LaVine, I guess, who's going to trade with the Bulls? I don't think James Harden would really be okay with that. So to me, I don't like Boston. Yeah. Boston's not going to give up Jason Tatum for him.
Like, I don't know who they're going to do.
No, I don't know. I mean, really, here's the thing, though. Who wants to give up an all-star caliber player and 4 first-round picks for James Harden, who's, 31 years old, and made it clear he doesn't really have any loyalty? His contract's done in 2 years. You're going to have to pay him over $40 million a year, and he doesn't really have any loyalty to any place right now. So why would you want to sign James Harden? Why would you want to bring him onto your team if he potentially is going to leave in 2 years? So to me, I just don't think there's many plausible landing spots because no team wants to give up a young player they drafted, developed for a guy, James Harden, who might not even want to be there.
Somebody's going to do it.
Someone will. And that person, I feel bad for whatever team that is because it probably won't go well the way it's looking right now.
We'll have to see. All right. What's up next?
We got some NHL news here. This is your neck of the woods, so
yes,
take it away, McGinnis.
All right. So the first thing I want to note is, unfortunately, Henrik Lundqvist, who we've been talking about a lot recently on the show, decided not to play this upcoming NHL season. And this is going to sound weird because it's not due to COVID reasons. It's due to a heart issue, which is one of the most bizarre things I've heard in a while, and really unfortunate for him and the Capitals because now they're definitely going to have to start their backup, who was very good this last year, don't get me wrong, but now you're missing that veteran, and it's just unfortunate for him as a whole. You're getting towards the end of your career, and then you can't play a season.
Yeah, it certainly stinks. I mean, I saw this news the other day. I think came out maybe yesterday or earlier today. And I was kind of shocked because, I mean, I never imagined we like I said, we've been talking about this. And we've been like saying, well, if he can get back to who he was, I mean, that would really help him out. And now suddenly, he's not going to play this year. At the age he's at, I mean, that could be huge in terms of ramifications for the rest of his career. Yeah,
and here's the great question. If the heart issue is bad enough, will he have a rest of his career?
I mean, if you don't feel comfortable going out on the ice again, and especially, I think maybe someone that is COVID related, because I know COVID can have some heart-related issues or something like that. I don't know, other medical issues behind it. But, like I said, heart issues are serious here, man. If you have a situation where you don't feel like going out on the ice again, taking contact, or maybe heart rate up or anything like that, having the stress of just being out there, if you don't feel like you can deal with that anymore, I mean, you got to call it quits then. And that's a probably dramatic end to a career that you expected to go out on a much higher level.
Yeah, and frankly, he's one of those players where you kind of think where you're like, if somebody was to win a championship, it should be him. He's one of those people that deserves it, but has not gotten it to this point. And the Capitals was a chance. We'll still have to see what's going on with him in the future with that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he comes back. That's what we're looking for, is to get this guy back in the ice. But for now, it looks like we have a year where he's not going to be around, which is just, it's tough, man, because you expect him to be around, especially when you get all the news coming into the year, and now suddenly to have him pulled away like that, someone who's been a staple of the NHL for so long, it's very tough for sports fans to deal with.
Very, very unfortunate for both player and fans. But now we move on to Anthony Duclair signs with the Florida Panthers. I know how we were talking about him with the Ottawa Senators, so now the Senators don't even have him, by the way. Senators were already a train wreck, but that does not help them. And this is kind of an odd move for me. The Florida Panthers, I'll look this up real quick, but the Florida Panthers had, if you're talking about goals per game last year in the regular season, they were 6th. So even if they have depth issues, it's not like you have a scoring problem. And on the other hand, if you look at their goals against per games, they were 3rd to last. Now, a lot of that, there was a big debate on whether that was the defense or the goaltending. It could have been a combination. I think the goaltending definitely had something to do with it. Bobrovsky played horribly. But that also can have partially to do with your defense that's behind you. So I would have thought maybe invest more in your defense and or goaltending. So I'm not exactly sure why adding offense is helpful here, other than maybe filling in some depth issues if they have any.
Yeah, and this is like you said, this is really elevate the team, or is it just building on something you already have plenty of? Because at this point, the Panthers are kind of in the middle of the Atlantic. Well, now they're changing up just obviously, but they were kind of in the middle of the Atlantic last year. So this is really actually like elevate them much higher, or is it just kind of sticking with what they already have?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, Duclair did score, I believe, 40 points last year. Let me take a look at this again. But yeah, he had 40 points, 23 goals, 17 assists. That's not bad. It's not like huge or anything, but it's certainly not bad. But yeah, it was just a little confusing on my part. I'm like, maybe they just couldn't get a defenseman that would help out their team all that much, or maybe they think they've got it set, but they just didn't gel last year. I'm not exactly sure why they made this particular move.
Yeah, it certainly is pretty confusing. Like you said, you know what their weakness is at this point. Why can't you go out there and do something about it? Why are you building on your strength? Now, maybe their offense will be good enough to just help them out and get through some of these tough situations. But at the same point,
Yeah,
I think it only goes so far.
You need a complete team. Complete teams are better. They just are. I think the Carolina Hurricanes were a great example of that over the past couple of seasons, despite the fact that they did not go super far this last year in the playoffs. But yeah, when you don't have a good goaltending or defensive solution, it kind of brings up some serious questions. But
and now we have the main piece of information here from the NHL, because this recently came out. I think with the last 2 hours this came out. It looks like we're setting up to have a 56-game regular season. Is that what we're hearing right now?
Yeah, so what they're shooting for right now is January 13th, 56-game regular season. Whether that will actually happen, I think it's possible for certain, but it's not 100% set at this point. This is what they're shooting for at this point. 56 games is a lot less than normal, but at the same time, this doesn't bother me too much because I'm always waiting throughout the whole regular season to get to the playoffs, so it's not going to upset me too much to have at least one season this way.
Yeah, and then you can get back to normal next year, right? So if you shorten the year this season, get back to normal in 2022, I mean, that kind of makes it fair and better at the time, because we get to get right back to what you do.
Well, and then you don't diss the new NHL team, the Seattle Kraken, coming in the following season, having to play some weird, odd, whatever the heck kind of a season this is. They get a normal season coming into their first. And that's going to be an interesting expansion draft for them, like it was the Vegas Golden Knights just a few years back.
Yeah, but it's good to see the NHL is still expanding, though. And you do have down here, you want some dark horse thing like. You still there, McGinnis?
Sorry, I lost you there. You've been a bit choppy, but I think I heard at least part of that. We were talking dark horse. Pardon me. We were talking dark horse candidates for the Stanley Cup. So let's take a look at the standings from last year. Obviously, you've got some of your top teams, but I think the Hurricanes have to come in here from what was the Metropolitan at the time for me, along with possibly the Islanders, depending on how their season goes. Obviously, they have to make the playoffs, but you got to remember they did make it to the third round this last year. So those are a couple teams that come to mind for me from the East. As for the West, this is a little harder. I don't really think there's a whole lot coming from your Central Division, but I could see maybe a Flames, especially with their addition of Jacob Markstrom. I don't think the Oilers will, possibly the Canucks. So there are a couple options, but note they're both coming from only two divisions. The Central, I don't see a dark horse coming from there, and the Atlantic, I don't see a dark horse coming from there, despite the fact that Joe Thornton ended up signing with the Leafs, which is really odd. I'm not really sure that'll help the Leafs or not. We'll see. He's very old at this point and was put on the third line of the Sharks, mind you, but you might as well throw something in the mix for the Leafs at this point.
Yeah. Is it because you think that the Central and the Atlantic, or at least what they were last year, are so top heavy that they won't produce a dark horse team, or is it because just for other reasons there's just not as much depth there maybe as you would look for?
So let's look at some of these teams. So the Jets, Predators, Wild, and Blackhawks are the teams that you could that are up for, could be dark horse. I can't trust any of these teams in any way, and nothing really makes them spark for me except maybe Connor Hellebuyck from the Jets. So it's harder for me to make a distinction there. For the Flames, they're not a contender, but they're a decent team, and they just got an upgrade at the goalie position. So it kind of makes sense to at least kind of throw them in the mix there as a dark horse. And the Canucks are actually a really good team. I think a dark horse might actually be a little bit of an understatement, but they've kind of underachieved a little bit in this last season. As for the Atlantic, if anybody thinks they can trust the Maple Leafs at this point, it's only Maple Leafs fans that are dreaming. I think everybody understands you literally cannot trust the Maple Leafs whatsoever. Panthers, we just got done talking about them. They have zero back-end protection. The Canadiens, Sabres, Senators, and Red Wings might not even make the playoffs. And then you go to the Metropolitan, or what was obviously these aren't going to be the same divisions, but if you're talking through those current divisions, the Metropolitan is loaded. So even the Blue Jackets could potentially be a Stanley Cup dark horse here because, again, the only thing they're really missing is offense. So they're in a position where if they picked just a couple of pieces up and got hot at the right time, there's some chances there. So basically, when I'm looking at dark horses, you have to look at teams that have something, but not what you would consider enough or added what could be enough.
So if you had this narrowed down, just pick one single dark horse for the season. Which team would you take?
All right, let's look through this again.
Your reaction says you don't really know. You're gonna have to make a quick decision here.
I am gonna have to make a decision because this is difficult. I'm probably gonna. I'm thinking between the Flames, Hurricanes, and Blue Jackets right now. And out of those, I'd probably have to go. I'm probably going to have to go Flames. But all three of those teams are probably up there for dark horse.
All right. So then McGinnis gives his dark horse pick for this year's Stanley Cup. And again, the NHL going to have a 56-game regular season beginning on January 13th. That's the plan moving forward. We'll see if that actually happens or not, like you said. But for right now, let's just assume that's what's going to happen.
Until, they change the date again and the number of games.
Yeah, 2 days from now, when they change the date again, and we'll have a whole new schedule come out. But that's near here and there. We're going to get to some thinking or dreaming. I believe that did you go first last time?
Yeah, let's have you go through both of yours, and then we'll go through both of them this time. We've kind of gone back and forth the past few episodes. Let's mix it up a little.
All righty. Well, here's mine for you. The NHL could have fit more games in if they made a decision sooner.
I think this is not
dreaming.
I think this is an obvious thinking. If they had made decisions quicker, they would be more in the NBA's position. And they followed them with the COVID procedures in the first place. So I'm not exactly sure why they haven't now. And it's not like both games aren't indoors typically. And one thing I was thinking about is you could attempt to have more outdoor games now that you're, in this COVID situation. So maybe especially those Canadian teams who are up in Canada anyway, it's not like there aren't outdoor rinks up there.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting because you're right. They could have had a situation where they could have been in the NBA's position, but they've taken so long. I mean, the NBA playing their preseason, and the NHL is just getting a schedule together right now. So that tells you two leagues are at very different points in terms of their process. And my final question for you today is, the Detroit Lions should spend all of their draft picks on defensive players this year. Is that thinking or dreaming?
All of their first-round draft picks, or literally every
all their draft picks this year.
I think any team that spends literally all their draft picks on offense or defense is being stupid regardless. So I think this has to be dreaming. But I think you're onto something with definitely having a disproportionate more defensive draft picks than offensive, especially in the first and second rounds.
Yeah, I think you have to go defense there, right? Because, I know you got Jeff Okudah corner this past year in the first round, but at the same point,
who did
have offensive pieces. He's done nothing so far. He hasn't helped you whatsoever.
Name a single corner or safety on the Lions that did almost anything this year.
You can't. He's got Desmond Drew for a lot of money from you to do a little bit, basically, for them. So you got a tough situation there in Detroit. It's a piece, though. I do think you have a sturdy offensive line. The quarterback, the running backs, the receiver, the tight end. I think you've got pieces for the offense. It's just that defense right now, man. That defense is something else.
Yeah, actually, our draft picks on offense have kind of hit under the Patricia system, which is interesting because Frank Ragnow has worked. TJ Hawkinson has worked. I mean, despite the fact that he was an awful coach, he made some good draft choices.
Oh, he really did. You've hit on some good selections so far, and I don't know what we've really seen from DeAndre Swift so far because he's been injured, because it's been a crazy year. I would like to see DeAndre Swift get more touches early in the season next year. So I think DeAndre Swift does have a chance to be a bell cow, be a starting caliber back for Detroit moving forward. You do have Jonah Jackson, who's a rookie, starting left guard. You've got Logan Sternberg as a backup at right. So you've got some guys from this draft who are on your roster making impact plays here. Like you said, he's hit on a lot of picks here, surprisingly, on offense.
Yeah, it's just he was good at something. So at least there's the one thing Matt Patricia was good at, folks. Mark it down, and then you can literally trash him on everything else.
It's funny because Matt Patricia probably didn't make most of those selections. It's probably the general manager who you also fired. So I guess it doesn't really matter either way now. But
oof, yeah. Can we
all right,
fire?
Well, hit me with some of yours. Let's see what you got for me.
I wish we could fire owners. That's where I'm at.
Dude, that would have happened way too often if we could do that.
Oh, but it should happen with Detroit. You tell me I'm wrong, though.
You wish. All right, hit me with some questions for me. Hit me with them.
All right. Let's hit these up real quick. All right. So my first one here is Marcus Mariota will not have a starting job despite having a good game against the Chargers. I mean, a starting job.
Yeah, this is thinking. Yeah, this is absolutely thinking here because one game doesn't get you a starting job. I know he looked good, and I know he's had a starting job in the past, but it's not like it would be out of left field if he did get another starting gig. But frankly, I would rather have Jameis Winston than Marcus Mariota at this point. 4 or 5 guys are going to be first-round picks at quarterback coming up from the college football this year. So you got 5 jobs there coming up that will be taken by rookies, or maybe 4, who knows. You've got Jameis Winston, who could get a starting job yet, and Andy Dalton, who's a backup, who could get a starting job. So you've got these players out there who are solid backups, maybe can get starting jobs. I mean, even I'm blanking on his name now. So Nick Mullins in San Francisco, you potentially could get a starting job, and he's a backup quarterback. So really, there's not going to be as many job openings this year or this coming off season as you might expect. Marcus Mariota still is under contract for 1 more year. He's getting paid over $1 million to be the backup quarterback in Las Vegas. If you're Marcus Mariota, you might not want to leave because you're still going to get $10 million to basically hold a clipboard for the year. So I think if you're Marcus Mariota, you don't really want to go over anywhere, and I don't think any of your team is going to be offering him a job.
Unfortunate considering the potential talent there. What would it take, do you think, over the next couple of games, if there was anything that was going to do it for him? How much would it take to get a starting job over the next 2 games?
Let's say it's 2 games. In 2 games' time, you would need 600 passing yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. Because frankly, his biggest issue was the injuries in Tennessee, and also the fact that at some point, I believe like in the middle of the way through his second year or maybe his third year, he just stopped throwing the ball well. I mean, what's happened to Lamar Jackson in Baltimore where he's not throwing the ball for 200 yards a game? That's kind of what happened to Marcus Mariota, except for the fact that Mariota couldn't run like Lamar Jackson, and they didn't have the offensive scheme that they do in Baltimore where it really helps Lamar. Mariota in Tennessee, he just kind of fell apart because he couldn't throw the ball that well. And he started throwing more picks than touchdowns. So if you could flip that around and get to a point where you're healthy and you're throwing for close to 300 yards a game or throwing for 250 yards a game, not throwing those interceptions, absolutely you'll get some looks. The issue is that I don't think you're going to have a big enough sample size to convince the team that you're worthy of a starting job.
Though, again, we have seen teams like with Jimmy Garoppolo in short periods of time who just made decisions. So who knows? Maybe he'll have shots somewhere. All right, but I'll move on to my second one now. The Saints will lose despite getting Breeze back this Sunday.
I have the Kansas City Chiefs as the top team in the NFL for a reason. And that reason is Patrick Mahomes, but you also have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman. There's so much speed and so many good players on your offense. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Kelce, I believe, are both in the top 5 for receiving yards this year. So you got those guys up there. You've got some depth pieces and guys like Mecole Hardman. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's a decent running back and give you something in there. The offensive line's not terrible. And Patrick Mahomes, even if he gets pressured, he can get out and throw the ball away perfectly fine. He's a very mobile quarterback. And we saw him throw 3 interceptions this past weekend and take a 30-yard sack and still win a football game. There's very few quarterbacks that could possibly pull that off. So I think Kansas City here, despite, no one's getting Drew Brees back, and they are missing Michael Thomas too on offense, so they're not fully healthy there. I think even though they get Drew Brees back, they're going to lose this game.
So it's thinking then.
It is absolutely thinking McGinnis. You got two thinking ones right here.
Wow! Yay! All right. What do we got
I think we got
left?
one thing left. It's your NHL predictions.
Yeah. Okay. So this. Or hold up. We got a little bit of a mix up here.
Yeah.
There you
sure
go.
thing.
All right. So we'll go for best NHL regular season numbers then. Just throwing this off the bat. I might have to switch this up a little bit. We had a little bit of a technical error here, but let's look back at the NHL standings here real quick from last year. Who would I have to have with most wins in the NHL? I'm probably going to have to go Lightning, although I will say that's somewhat of an actual shaky pick because they won the Stanley Cup, and we all know how that can affect a team.
Yeah, it's very hard to repeat.
Yeah. So even in the regular season, we can see dips from teams, especially, they are the ones with the least rest. Although I wouldn't think that would matter that much since they've had literal months off at this point. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see with that one. I think second, I would have to probably go with the Bruins. Or actually, I think I'll go with the Avalanche. And the reason for this is because the Bruins are in a much tougher division than the Avalanche are. So despite the fact that the Bruins typically, I would say, should win more games, with the way the divisions are realigned, they don't have the luxury of the Atlantic Division where they get to play mediocre opponents a crap ton of games during the year. They won't have that same situation now, versus where the Avalanche will have a better time with easier opponents, and it's about the same as they're having with the Central Division. So I could see the Avalanche pulling this off.
Yeah, so you got the Bruins in third then, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to put the Bruins in third. The Capitals are an interesting question. So with horrible statistical goaltending, at least from their starter this last year, they still won quite a few games. So what do you do with that? It's a big question. Can they overcome potentially bad goaltending again and not having a legitimate starter again because they don't know what they're going to have to do now? They don't have Henrik Lundqvist as an option. They're going to have to go with their backup again, who was really good, but you don't know what you're going to get when you start starting him full time. Right. So that's always a question for me. The Blues are a massive question for me now that Jordan Binnington was an absolute toilet during the playoffs. The Golden Knights I like along with the Flames, but I don't really totally trust either of those teams. So I'll give it to the Caps at 4. Or pardon me, I'll actually give it to the Flyers at 4 and the Caps at 5.
All right, so your top 5 teams. Correct me, I got this right. You had number 1, you had the Lightning, the Avalanche, 3 the Bruins, and you said, what was it, 4, or how would you say it, 4 and 5?
I'll go with Flyers, Capitals, and I want to make this very clear. This is the number of wins, not which team is the best, because the list might not look the same if I had to tell you which team was the best.
Although you mentioned that the division they're playing is going to impact it.
Yeah, that was. I'm going to mix it up a little bit just for that sake with the Bruins and the Avalanche, because I mean, the Avalanche aren't really. They've got to face the Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights. Outside of that, and versus the Bruins, who are going to be in the toughest division in all of the NHL.
Yeah, so one definitely. I mean, it's totally fair to factor that in because I mean it's going to make an impact here.
Right. So even though the Bruins might be the better team, they're in a tougher division now, and they're not used to that. They're used to playing in the Atlantic, where they really only have 1 or 2 teams that really make any sort of a mark on them.
Yes, now you're flipping things sense to take that into account. So we'll see a situation here where maybe the Bruins, even though they had the best record in the NHL last year, they might fall to the 3rd or 4th best record in the league.
And I will say part of the reason, if the NHL season had gone the full 82 games, there is a potential the Tampa Bay Lightning would have passed them anyway. So also factor that in. The season was cut short, so you didn't really get to see those final games to see where they ended up anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, so there's a situation where you never know how the season could have ended, and we're going to have a shorter regular season this year anyway. So now that's going to impact how it plays out again. But luckily, we'll get back to regularity in 2022. But for now, I mean, does this change your preparation for a season or how you're game playing for a full season now that you're going to cut off basically 20 to 25 to 30 games? Impact, right?
It has to make an impact in some form or another. It's just how are the coaches going to adjust, if at all? Because it's still kind of a marathon. I mean, 56 games is no sneeze. And then you've got you've got a couple months of playoffs at most. So it's still a long time. But at the same time, because it's shorter, it might feel more like a sprint to the players. And we really could see a few teams that are just kind of random bounce in here because they got hot at the right time. We've seen this in the NHL where at the beginning of the season, there's a team on top of the division and you just kind of like, what on earth are they doing there? And so this could happen in which you could see just kind of a lot of random stuff, especially since the divisions are different. You don't know what you're going to get. You could get a lot of random teams in here, which is good news for the New York Rangers as well, because if there was going to be a team that was going to bounce, they've got a shot at.
I've seen that randomness in baseball a couple of times. I'm a Mets fan, so we know every year with the New York Mets, there's always maybe a period of like 12 to 18 games where the New York Mets look really good, and it's like, are they going to make a playoff push? And surprise, surprise, after going like 15-3 during 18-game stretch, the next 18 games, they'll go 2-16, and they'll be completely shut down. I mean, that's what they do. So we're used to seeing this thing across sports leagues and in multiple sports. But I guess, is that it for your top 5 then?
Yeah, I think that's it. I might have to make a different list for actual top 5 Stanley Cup contenders because that list might look a little bit different, especially with the Capitals having. I already had questions about their goaltending, but now who's their backup to their backup, and significant goaltending questions there for the Capitals.
Yeah, we get to see how that all plays out during the regular season beginning on January 13th. So we got a little while ago. We got about a month before that kicks off. But for right now, I'd like to remind you of our sponsor for the Grueling Truth and our sponsor for the show, McGinnis' favorite topic of the show. As always, this is no matter how much we joke around on the show, this is always the segment that gets the most laughs out of both of us. But I'd like to remind you that we are sponsored by Manscaped.com. You can go to Manscaped.com and use promo code TGT20 to get 20% off your first order and free shipping. They sponsor a lot of smaller content creators like us as well, so you'll see probably this plenty of different locations. Again, promo code TGT20, 20% off for all of their products, free shipping. It really helps us out, helps the show out when we get people to buy using the promo code. We would appreciate anything we do for the show. But you know what? That was a great week, McGinnis. It's been a great show. I'm exhausted. I'm going to go lie down and get some rest.
Hold up. Before you do, I got one last thing to mention. If you liked the NHL, if you liked the NHL content today, I will say I'm trying to get the actual NHL show back to running, especially since we might have a legitimate season coming up here. So we're looking to see if we can't get a co-host for that. We'll see how that goes. So you might see an NHL show coming up here soon. So just keep your eyes out for that.
You can watch the Sam and Sam show every week live on Facebook at The Grueling Truth on the Truth Facebook page, actually. We are here every Friday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you check us out. We're, like I said, every week we cover a little bit of every sport. We appreciate you guys listening. But for now, for Sam McGinnis, for Sam Teets, you've been listening to The Sam and Sam Show. We hope to see you